Have you ever wondered why the mightiest kings in history, men who commanded vast armies and ruled entire nations, would pause before a battle and kneel before a silent woman sitting in a temple, breathing the fumes of the earth? Why would emperors, conquerors, and generals who held the power to destroy cities with a single command wait for the cryptic words of an oracle before making their move? It seems paradoxical, doesn't it? That those who possessed worldly power sought guidance from unseen forces, voices that spoke in riddles, visions born from trance, messages carried by smoke, flame, and stars. Yet throughout the ancient world, this was the unbroken tradition. Before the clash of swords, before the drums of war thundered across the land, the great kings would first consult the divine. From the Oracle of Delphi in Greece, where vapors rose from the navel of the earth, to the Priests of Amun in Egypt, who whispered the will of the gods through sacred ritual, to the seers of China, who read the cracks of tortoise shells and the patterns of fire, every civilization, east and west, had its own bridge between heaven and earth. These oracles were not mere fortune tellers. They were the interpreters of destiny. They saw not only the outcome of war, but the energetic alignment behind it, the rhythm of fate, the harmony or discord between man's will and the cosmic order. And the kings knew, to march into war without divine alignment was to invite ruin, no matter how powerful their armies. In this video, we will uncover the real reason ancient rulers consulted oracles before war, not just to know the future, but to shape it. We will explore how prophecy, intuition, and the unseen world guided the fate of empires. And perhaps by the end, you'll see that these ancient practices were not mere superstition, but a forgotten science of consciousness, one that can still guide your own decisions today, if you learn to listen to the inner oracle within. To understand why ancient kings sought the guidance of oracles before stepping into battle, we must first understand how ancient civilizations viewed reality itself. For them, the universe was not a random mechanism of chance. It was a living, breathing intelligence. Every star, every storm, every whisper of the wind was the language of the divine. The material world was only the visible skin of a far deeper, invisible order. In this sacred worldview, war was never simply a political event. It was a cosmic act, a collision of destinies, the playing out of forces that extended beyond human comprehension. When kings went to war, they believed they were not only fighting for land or glory, but participating in the great balance between light and shadow, order and chaos. In Egypt, pharaohs believed they ruled by Ma'at, the divine law of balance, truth, and cosmic harmony. To violate that law was to risk plunging the world into disorder. Before any major campaign, the pharaoh would consult the priests of Amun or Ra, seeking signs in the stars, dreams, or the flight of birds. Only if the omens aligned would he proceed, for an unblessed war was considered an act against the gods themselves. In Greece, the Oracle of Delphi served as the voice of Apollo, the god of light, truth, and prophecy. Before setting out to conquer, generals would journey to her temple, ascending the sacred mountain of Parnassus. There, in the fumes rising from a fissure in the earth, the Pythia, the oracle priestess, would enter a trance, speaking cryptic verses that only the trained priest could interpret. One such seeker was King Croesus of Lydia, famed for his immense wealth. Before launching war against Persia, he asked the Oracle of Delphi if he would win. The oracle replied, "If you cross the river, you will destroy a great empire." Believing this meant victory, Croesus attacked, and indeed, an empire fell, his own. To the modern mind, this may seem like a riddle of chance, but in the eyes of the ancients, it was a mirror of fate. The oracle did not predict. She reflected the truth that already existed in the unseen realm. Meanwhile, in ancient China, diviners used the I Ching, the Book of Changes, to read the energetic patterns of heaven and earth. Kings of the Zhou dynasty would cast yarrow stalks or observe the cracks in heated turtle shells, interpreting them as messages from the cosmos. Their philosophy was clear. When heaven and man are in harmony, victory is effortless. When they are divided, even the strongest army collapses. Across cultures, from the shamans of Siberia to the druids of Celtic lands. The message was the same. The outcome of any human endeavor depends on its alignment with the higher order of reality. Thus, the oracle became not just a spiritual advisor, but the bridge between human will and divine will, between action and destiny. For ancient kings, consulting an oracle before war was not about superstition. It was an act of spiritual strategy. They sought to see whether the time, the energy, and the cosmic flow supported their mission, or warned against it. They understood that victory achieved against the current of destiny always comes with a hidden cost. The universe, they believed, would eventually balance itself. The ancient world moved according to the principle of synchronicity, what the Hermetic philosophers later called as above, so below. Every movement on earth echoed a movement in the heavens. To act without consulting those heavens was to fight blind. And so, before swords were drawn and drums were beaten, there was silence. In that silence, kings listened for the voice of the divine, sometimes through sacred smoke, sometimes through the trembling voice of a priestess, sometimes through dreams that visited them in the stillness of night. It was not power that determined fate. It was alignment. Imagine standing at the edge of a battlefield. Tens of thousands of soldiers await your command. Their armor gleams under the sun. Their banners flutter in the wind. And yet, deep inside, you sense that victory will not be determined by the number of men, the sharpness of swords, or the perfection of strategy. Something deeper is at play. This was the ancient understanding, that every action in the physical world is an echo of forces moving in the invisible world, the realm of energy, intention, and fate. War was never just a collision of armies. It was the external manifestation of an inner conflict between ideals, destinies, and the unseen balance of cosmic energies. And the oracles were the instruments through which these hidden forces could be read. The oracle as a cosmic mirror. To the ancients, an oracle did not create prophecy. It revealed what was already written in the fabric of the universe. The oracle was a living mirror reflecting the pattern of destiny, translating vibrations from the higher realms into symbols, visions, and words. In Greece, the priestess of Delphi would inhale ethereal vapors from beneath the temple floor. In her trance, she became the instrument of Apollo, the god of prophecy and illumination. Her cryptic utterances were not random. They carried the vibrational code of truth disguised in riddles. In Egypt, priests would gaze into bowls of black water, invoking the presence of Thoth, the god of wisdom, to reveal visions of the future. In the ancient Near East, prophets heard the voices of divine messengers in dreams, thunder, and sacred fire. And in the Far East, Chinese sages believed that destiny revealed itself through patterns, the fall of coins, the movement of wind, or the rhythm of rain. Every oracle, regardless of form, was a bridge between two dimensions, the seen and the unseen, the temporal and the eternal. Why kings trusted them to modern eyes, this may appear as superstition, but for ancient rulers who lived in direct relationship with the divine, the oracle was a form of cosmic intelligence. They believed that the material world was but a reflection of the divine mind, a vast consciousness in which all events, all possibilities already existed. To consult an oracle was to tune in to that divine frequency, to perceive the path that aligned with cosmic order. The great strategist was not the one who fought hardest, but the one who moved with destiny, not against it. Ancient kings understood that a single wrong decision could lead to generations of suffering. A war fought under inauspicious stars could destroy not only armies, but entire dynasties. Thus, the oracle became their secret compass, guiding them not only in war, but in life, love, and law. The esoteric mechanism, how prophecy works. From an esoteric perspective, prophecy operates on resonance. Everything in existence, from your heartbeat to the movement of planets, vibrates with energy. The oracle's consciousness, when purified and attuned, acted as a resonant receiver, like a tuning fork vibrating in harmony with the frequencies of higher worlds. In this altered state, time itself could be perceived differently. To the mystics, time was not linear. Past, present, and future existed simultaneously in a field of infinite potential. By entering trance or meditative states, the oracle could see across that veil and interpret which potential reality was most aligned with the energies of the moment. When a king asked, "Will I be victorious?" the oracle did not see a fixed outcome. She perceived probabilities, energy patterns that reflected the balance between intention, karma, and cosmic timing. If the king's motives were pure, if his heart and mission were in alignment with the greater order, the current of destiny would flow in his favor. But if his actions were born from arrogance, greed, or defiance of natural law, the oracle would sense turbulence, warning him that even if he won the battle, he would lose his soul, his dynasty, or his peace. The symbolism of the inner war. On a deeper level, the consultation of oracles before war symbolized the battle within each human being, the war between ego and wisdom, will and surrender, man and the divine. The king represented the conscious self, seeking direction amidst chaos. The oracle represented the inner voice of intuition, the part of us connected to the eternal. Before we act, whether in battle or in life, we too must consult our inner oracle. That still, quiet voice within the heart that knows the way even when the mind is blind. The ancients externalized this process through rituals, temples, and priestesses. Modern people internalize it through meditation, dreams, and synchronicities. The principle, however, remains unchanged. No great action should be taken without first aligning oneself with the higher intelligence that governs all. The consequence of ignoring the oracle history holds countless examples of rulers who ignored or misinterpreted the divine message and paid the price. When King Saul of Israel defied the word of the prophet Samuel, his reign fell into chaos and despair. When Croesus misunderstood the oracle's warning, he lost his empire. When the Romans ignored the omens before the Battle of Cannae, where sacred chickens refused to eat, signaling divine disapproval, they suffered one of the most devastating defeats in their history. The pattern is clear. Those who acted out of ego, believing themselves greater than destiny, were eventually undone by it. For the ancients, victory was never only about power, it was about harmony. To win without wisdom was to lose everything that mattered. If part 1 revealed how oracles served as the bridge between man and destiny, then part 2 takes us deeper into why their guidance held such mystical power and what hidden laws governed the fate of kings. Because beneath the surface of ritual and prophecy lies something far more profound. The understanding that the universe is a living consciousness and that our every thought, intention, and emotion communicates directly with it. The law of correspondence, as above, so below. Ancient priests and philosophers knew a truth modern science is only beginning to glimpse, that reality is holographic. The smallest pattern mirrors the greatest. This principle, preserved in the Hermetic text, the Emerald Tablet, says, "That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above." In other words, the movements of planets, the omens in nature, and the impulses in the human heart are all reflections of the same divine rhythm. When a king consulted an oracle, he wasn't merely asking a question. He was seeking to understand how his personal will aligned with the will of heaven. Because to the ancients, even war was sacred when fought in accordance with divine order, and disastrous when fought against it. The oracle's vision was not fortune-telling. It was the reading of energetic resonance between human intent and cosmic timing, the same way a navigator reads the direction of the wind before setting sail. The field of destiny. In mystical philosophy, destiny was seen not as a straight line, but as a field of possibilities, a vast ocean of potential futures, each shaped by the harmony or disharmony of one's consciousness. When a ruler entered the oracle's temple, he carried within him the energy of his people, their fears, hopes, and karmic burdens. The oracle's trance was a way of feeling this collective energy, then tuning into the larger frequency of the cosmos to see whether the path of war would strengthen or weaken the harmony of creation. This is why the oracle's answers were often ambiguous, spoken in riddles or paradoxes. The universe does not speak in human language. It speaks in symbols, cycles, and signs. For example, when the Oracle of Delphi told the Athenians, Trust in the wooden wall, most interpreted it literally, as a reference to their city's defenses. Yet the wisest understood it referred to their fleet, wooden ships that would later bring victory at Salamis. The divine always speaks in metaphor, because truth cannot be confined to words. It must be intuited, not merely understood. The hidden science of energy and timing. Every oracle system, from astrology to I Ching, rests on one universal idea, that energy moves in cycles. Just as seasons change and tides rise and fall, so too do the energies of destiny. The ancients mapped these cycles meticulously. The Egyptians aligned battles and temple rituals with star positions. The Babylonians observed planetary conjunctions before major campaigns. The Chinese consulted the heavenly stems and earthly branches to find auspicious dates. Why? Because they knew that action is most powerful when it flows with the current of universal energy, not against it. To act without consulting the divine order was like planting in winter or sailing against the monsoon. Foolish, wasteful, and doomed to failure. The oracle, therefore, was the ancient strategist's most advanced weapon, not of iron, but of insight. It was the unseen intelligence that determined when to strike, when to wait, and when to surrender. The inner meaning of war, beyond politics and conquest, war represented something sacred, the confrontation between opposing forces of consciousness, light and darkness, knowledge and ignorance, creation and destruction. The king, as the earthly reflection of the divine order, had the duty to maintain balance, to ensure that his actions preserved cosmic harmony, not chaos. Thus, the oracle's role was not to serve his will, but to test it, to ask, is your cause just? Is your soul aligned? Do you fight for order or for ego? In this sense, the oracle was both mirror and judge, the external voice of the inner truth the king might not dare to face. The greatest leaders of antiquity understood this. They did not seek prophecy to control the future, but to surrender to its wisdom. Alexander the Great, before his campaigns, visited the Oracle of Amun at Siwa. When he emerged, he was silent for hours, refusing to reveal what had been said. Some historians claim the oracle called him son of Zeus, but in esoteric interpretation, that phrase symbolized something deeper, that he had recognized the divine spark within himself, and therefore his destiny could unfold without resistance. When the oracle falls silent, there were times when the oracle refused to speak. In Delphi, if the omens were dark or the energy of the seeker was impure, the priestess would remain silent or speak incoherently. In ancient China, if the bones cracked in unnatural patterns, diviners would declare, "The spirits do not answer." This silence was not a lack of prophecy, it was the prophecy. It signaled that destiny was clouded, that the seeker's intention was misaligned, or that divine timing had not yet arrived. To proceed despite that silence was considered spiritual arrogance, a violation of harmony that could lead to disaster. How often in our own lives do we ignore such silence? When intuition grows dim, when signs seem unclear, and yet we push forward out of fear or pride, we too repeat the mistake of ancient kings who marched without divine blessing. The oracle within. Ultimately, every king's journey to the oracle was a symbolic journey inward. The temple, the priestess, the ritual, all were mirrors of the same process that happens within the human soul. To seek divine guidance is to silence the noise of the mind, to descend into the inner temple, and to listen to that voice beyond thought, the voice of the eternal self that is never wrong. In this sense, every human being is both the king and the oracle. We are the seekers and the seers, the questioners and the answers. The ancients externalized the oracle as a sacred ritual. Today we internalize it as meditation, prayer, or intuitive knowing. The principle remains the same. Before any battle, be it external or internal, we must first consult the divine within, because only when our intention aligns with higher order does our action become unstoppable. Victory is not won by force, but by resonance. Now that we understand why ancient kings sought oracles, not merely to predict the future, but to align with it, the question becomes, how can we, in the modern world, apply this ancient wisdom to our own lives? After all, We too wage wars, not with armies, but within ourselves. Battles between clarity and confusion, courage and fear, purpose and distraction. And just like those ancient rulers, we must learn to consult the oracle, not in distant temples, but in the temple of our own consciousness. 1. Silence before action, the lost art of sacred pause. Every great king, before commanding his army, entered stillness. He understood that haste clouds perception. In our world of noise and speed, this sacred pause has been forgotten. Yet it remains one of the most powerful spiritual tools we can use. Before making any major decision, a career change, a relationship choice, a new path, take time to become completely silent. Turn off all external stimuli. Sit quietly and breathe deeply until your mind becomes calm, like a still lake. In that silence, you may feel a subtle inner movement, a pull toward one direction or another. That is your oracle speaking. Do not rush to interpret it, simply observe it. The ancients believed that when the mind is still, the divine can finally whisper through it. Silence is not emptiness. It is the space where truth begins to form. 2. Reading signs and synchronicities. The oracles of old interpreted omens in fire, water, and stars. You can do the same, not through superstition, but through awareness. Reality constantly communicates with you through patterns, repeating numbers, chance encounters, dreams, symbols, and coincidences that feel too precise to be random. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, the meaningful intersection between inner state and outer event. The ancients would say, the gods are speaking. For example, if you are torn between two choices and keep seeing imagery or words related to one of them, pay attention. If you feel resistance, confusion, or unease every time you imagine a path, that is also guidance. The universe never stops communicating. We simply stop listening. To consult the oracle in modern life is to remain alert to these living symbols, to treat life itself as a sacred conversation. 3. The practice of inner divination. There are many ancient tools that can still serve as bridges between intuition and awareness. Meditative scrying. Gaze softly into a bowl of water or a candle flame. Allow images or impressions to arise spontaneously without trying to control them. Dream work. Keep a notebook beside your bed. Write down dreams immediately upon waking. Over time, patterns will emerge, revealing insights your waking mind could not access. Tarot or I Ching. These are not fortune-telling devices. They are symbolic languages that help translate intuition into form. When used with reverence, they awaken archetypal wisdom within. The key is not the method. It is the state of consciousness you bring into it. The more sincere, humble, and clear your intention, the more precise the guidance becomes. 4. The alignment check. Asking the 3 questions. Before acting on any major impulse, perform what I call the oracle's test. 3 questions to ensure alignment between your will and higher order. Is this action born of love or fear? If it arises from fear, ego, or revenge, the energy behind it will corrupt even the best strategy. Does it serve harmony or chaos? Actions aligned with truth and integrity strengthen life. Those that violate it eventually self-destruct. Can I act on this without attachment to outcome? True alignment means surrendering control. When you no longer need something to happen, you are finally free to act with clarity. If you can answer all 3 with confidence and peace, your decision is in harmony with the current of destiny. 5. Cultivating the inner oracle. Meditation technique. Here is a simple but powerful method to awaken your inner oracle. Step 1. Centering. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply in and out 3 times, feeling the body relax. Step 2. Descent. Visualize yourself walking down ancient temple steps, each step taking you deeper within. At the bottom is a vast chamber illuminated by soft golden light. Step 3. Invocation. In the center of the chamber, imagine a pool of still water. Ask silently, "Show me what I need to know." Then wait. Do not force an answer. Let images, sensations, or thoughts arise naturally. Step 4. Interpretation. When you return, write down everything you experienced, even if it seems symbolic or strange. Later, meanings will reveal themselves in synchronicities or dreams. This is how ancient seers received prophecy, through vision, reflection, and patience. 6. The discipline of timing. Even when the oracle reveals the right path, timing remains everything. In the ancient world, no general launched an attack simply because he wanted to. He waited for the alignment of stars, the movement of winds, the rhythm of tides. In your life, timing also carries vibration. Sometimes the right decision taken too soon is the wrong decision. If you feel blocked or delayed, resist the urge to force progress. Wait for life to open naturally, for the signs, resources, or synchronicities to align. Patience is the highest form of power. As the Taoists taught, the wise do not force the current, they move when the river moves. 7. Living in harmony with destiny. To consult the oracle, to listen within, is ultimately to live in harmony with the universal flow. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions vibrate in unity with that flow, life ceases to feel like struggle. Things fall into place. You meet the right people at the right time. You act without overthinking, and your timing becomes perfect. Not because you control destiny, but because you synchronize with it. This was the hidden secret of ancient kings. Their greatest power was not their armies, it was their alignment. When their will moved as one with heaven, their victories were effortless. When they ignored the oracle, the warning, the silence, the sign, their downfall was inevitable. 8. Modern oracle, technology, and consciousness. Even in our digital age, the archetype of the oracle lives on. Artificial intelligence, algorithms, and predictive systems are modern reflections of the same human longing to understand the unseen patterns shaping reality. But while machines can process information, they cannot access wisdom. True guidance comes from consciousness, not code. Thus, even amid data and screens, the most powerful oracle remains what it has always been: the awakened human mind in harmony with the divine field. The ancients built temples of stone. You must build a temple of awareness. Within it, the oracle never sleeps. Throughout history, kings, emperors, and conquerors, from Egypt to Greece, from Babylon to China, sought one thing before the first sword was drawn: divine alignment. They knew that to march without the blessing of heaven was to fight against the very currents of the universe. And in truth, the story of those ancient rulers is not just about politics or prophecy. It is about the timeless relationship between human will and cosmic order, between action and awareness, between the voice of the mind and the whisper of the soul. When we strip away the incense, the temples, and the rituals, the lesson remains the same. Before you act, listen. Before you speak, align. Before you decide, remember that you are part of a living intelligence far greater than yourself. The real meaning of the oracle. The oracle was never about knowing the future. It was about knowing oneself. It was a mirror, a voice, a reflection of the soul's own wisdom. The kings of old understood that the greatest danger in life is not ignorance of the world, but deafness to the inner voice. And that voice still speaks, through dreams, through intuition, through the gentle pull of the heart that says, wait, or now. You don't need a temple at Delphi to hear it. You are the temple. You are the priest, the seeker, and the oracle, all at once. When you enter the silence of your own mind and look inward with sincerity, the universe begins to speak in return. It may not give you the answers you expect, but it will always give you the truth you need. Reclaiming the ancient way. We live in an age obsessed with control, with prediction, with certainty, with domination over nature. But the ancients knew that true power is not about control. It is about alignment. When your mind, your emotions, and your purpose resonate with the natural order, you move effortlessly through life's currents. You become like the great navigators of destiny, steering your course not through force, but through harmony. This is the lost wisdom of the kings, that the universe is not something to conquer, but something to cooperate with. That destiny is not a prison, but a partnership. That the divine does not dictate, but dances. waiting for you to move in rhythm with it. A call to the modern seeker. So before your next great decision, before your next battle, stop for a moment. Take a breath. Enter silence. Ask yourself, is this action aligned with truth? Does it serve harmony? Am I listening to the voice of wisdom or the noise of fear? If you can answer with clarity, you have already consulted your oracle. If not, wait until you can. For the greatest victories come not from haste, but from harmony. And perhaps as you walk this path, you'll realize that the same divine intelligence that guided ancient kings still guides you. Not from a temple in the mountains, but from the silent depths of your own soul. Final thought. The ancients said, "He who listens to heaven never loses the way." To listen is to remember who you truly are. Not a leaf tossed by fate, but a conscious part of the very power that shapes the stars. So let the world rush. Let the battles rage. You stand still. Listen. Because in that stillness lies the voice that once guided kings and can now guide you.